Hey everyone, welcome to a midweek follow-up where we discuss this past Sunday's message, maybe discuss the readings that went along with it. We never really know where the conversation is going to go. So this past Sunday, we're looking at a passage in 2 Corinthians that seems to start with an idea that at first glance might be very, that's just talking about marriage. But when you look at the verse in the context of the whole passage and the verse that followed, especially, chapter 7, verse 1, you see that it's really getting at some beautiful truths about sanctification. So I thought it was a fun passage to go through. I had a couple conversations with people afterwards who, were honest. And when you started reading, I was like, how's he going to get a whole sermon out of this? And then as we're unpacking, we're like, oh, that's a lot bigger than I realized. So that was fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So any thoughts?
Yeah. I think the sermon was very well done. Yeah. That's that chunk of passage. Yeah. If you're looking at it on a very surface level, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot, but I think it was cool that you unpacked the examples that Paul was getting at. What does God's temple have to do with idols?
Yeah.
Right. What did God's, what was that relationship?
Yep.
Who is Belial?
Yep.
What is that? So things like that, even just helping people understand, helping us understand, all right, this is why Paul is using this example and helping us see the significance in that distinction between those things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought it was a great sermon, very encouraging.
I think if I would have, if we would have had an extra 15, 20 minutes, right, where your sermons can always go longer.
4 hours.
Yeah, easily. I think one thing I would have added that you can kind of talk about here on the video a little bit, I do think, and I meant it, there's a reason it was in the sermon, I think Christians need to be very deliberate and careful about what they consume.
Mm-hmm.
When you consider this idea of unequal yoking and the idea of, okay, it's something that has influence in my life. Well, yeah, what we read, what we watch, what we listen to, that influences us. It influences our perception, it influences our opinion, it influences our reactions to people. And so I think Christians do need to be very serious about what they consume. Mm-hmm. If we would have had that extra time, I would have maybe spent a little bit more on, okay, what's the nature of entertainment, because I think it can be very easy to take what is then a good idea of I want to be careful about what I consume. And if we're not careful, it becomes an arrogant, pharisaical, I'm holier than you, right? What'd you watch last night? We watched some Everybody Loves Raymond. It was like an old classic rerun on some network channel. And we watched Everybody Loves Raymond. Oh, that's not a Christian show.
Yeah.
You can't watch that. No, that's not what we're getting at.
Yeah.
It's got to be a personal ownership of, look, I am responsible for my sanctification. Like God is doing the work, but he calls me to make every effort in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I shared the example of my dad having to realize, man, all these fighting movies are making me more aggressive. Yeah. That's not healthy. Yeah. I admit that in college, I was not discerning with the music I listened to. Mm-hmm. I would listen to, if it sounded good, if it had a good beat, I would just listen to whatever music. Mm-hmm. And that includes music with plenty of obscenities. Mm-hmm. I played a lot of sports, a lot of IM sports, different teams, and I would miss a shot or somebody would do something, and I knew, and I stand by this, Christian speech is called to be pure, lovely, excellent, commendable. It's called to be speech that gives grace to those who hear it. Mm-hmm. So there's a part of me that knew, okay, I can't verbally articulate this obscenity, right? Yeah. But I'd miss a shot or something would go wrong, and in my mind it'd be like, right? Straight, and I was like, wow. And I had to do that self-assessment and that self-reflection and say, okay, why is this where my thought is going to? Mm. Where am I hearing it? Why are these words rattling around my mind? Mm. Where am I hearing it? Oh, I'm hearing it in the music I'm listening to. Yeah. And so I went through a period of several years where I basically purged and reset. Mm. And so for several years, I did not listen to any music that was not praise.
Yeah.
If this is not a praise and worship song, I'm not listening to it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everybody has to do that. I'm saying I got to a point where I realized that what I had been listening to was starting to shape my thoughts.
And so
I just detoxed, right? Okay, purged. And now I'm still very careful. Like I don't listen to music. Like I've gone into Spotify and I've made the controls so that if the song is explicit, my Spotify physically cannot play it. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
interesting. I didn't know that was a setting.
yeah, you can block explicit content. So if a song is explicit, I cannot listen to it because I know that, hey, at one point this affected me.
You know, sorry, you might.
Yeah, like it affected me, right? So I need to be careful about this. Now, if you look at my playlists, I've got plenty of music that's not praise and worship, right? Like even just last night, we're making dinner. It was ravioli and Italian sausage. So what playlist did I put on? My Rat Pack playlist, right? So I'm jamming out the Frank Sinatra, like, and I'm okay, you know? And so I would have, if I would have had that extra time, I would have gone into a larger conversation on the nature of entertainment and things like that.
Yeah. So following that thread, then, you know, how would you encourage someone who may say, like, all right, well, how do I know that line?
Yeah.
Like, how do I know what I'm consuming is actually influencing me in a bad way? I'm not angry. I'm not cursing and, you know, I'm not cursing people out. I'm not having road rage.
Yeah.
I'm not having any blatant outward signs that what I'm listening to or what I'm watching is having a severe effect on my behavior. So how do I know where the line is? How do I know that, okay, this isn't a Christian show? Am I okay to watch it?
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm okay to watch it or not?
Yep. Great question. And I don't have an easy answer. I have an immediate answer, but it is not an easy answer. So if you're watching this and you're like, sweet, we're going to get a really easy answer to this, no.
It's going to complicate.
It's going to complicate things. You've got to be mature and you have to take ownership of self-assessment and doing hard things. Now there's some stuff that is obvious, right? Let's talk about, let's step on some toes. Hopefully not. Actually, it'd be great if we didn't step on anyone's toes, but we might.
It's on YouTube. Someone might
Someone will find it. We've stepped on toes before on YouTube. In talking about this example, we'll also blow a myth out of the water that drives me crazy about Christianity. Right? Like men are the only one who deal with lust. Lust is only a problem for men. Y'all remember a book trilogy called 50 Shades? Like, I didn't know a lot of men reading that. I knew a lot of people reading it, including people who would have told you, like, oh, church every Sunday, or like, no, you can look at the content of that book and say nobody has any business reading this. Like, this is just blatantly unbiblical. You can't make a case for, oh no, it's healthy for me to read that book. No, it's not. It's blatantly unbiblical. Yeah. So there's some content that is just clearly unbiblical, right? Then there's other content, house hunters, right? Hey, let's look at, a family looking at 3 different homes and then they'll pick their favorite one. Sweet, right? You watch that show, you're like, wow, that was fun. I love this sort of stuff. That was relaxing. That was calming. That was just what I needed after a long, stressful day. Cool. I watch that and I'm like, wow, that's cool. I love this sort of stuff. Oh man, my kitchen's really small compared to those ones that I just saw. 2 days later, I'm mowing the yard and I'm like, man, my backyard's really, it's kind of a pit. Like, why those other houses have way nicer, right? Like, so the show that you watch, that's fine for you and your wife, incites jealousy in me, and incites discontentment in me, right? If I'm not mature and able to do a self-assessment and realize that, and start to unpack, wait a minute, whoa. I've always loved my backyard. Why is today it not good enough for me? Right? Like, if I can't do that, or I'm unwilling to do that, you and I can't answer those questions for people. So it requires, I would say it requires maturity. It requires a willingness to do self-assessment and honesty in doing self-assessment. If you are looking for a practical tip, if you're watching this and you're like, come on, give us something easy, I would say if you're having a doubt about the content,
there you go.
Pause, right? Take that as a yellow flag. If you're watching a show and you're like, should I be watching this? Well, ask yourself, why are you thinking that?
That's a great
you know what I mean? Like, if you're thinking it because, well, it's not Christian, so I'm not being holy, it might be the enemy's just trying to burden you with guilt. You know what I mean? It might be a legalistic friend or background. Like, right? If you're going through the content and you're like, no, it's not problematic, it's not unbiblical, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, maybe the enemy's just trying to get you down, right? Maybe you're spiraling. But if you're like, should I be watching this show? You know, if you said to me like, hey, should I be watching this show? What I say when people ask me that, you know, should I listen to this band? I'd say, well, why shouldn't you? Right? What's the argument for why you shouldn't?
That's a good follow-up.
Well, there's a lot of pretty graphic sex. Like I gotta skip a lot of scenes. Okay, well, what if all the sex we're going about? I mean, the language is bad. Like they're not talking about good things. Okay, what are the marriages like? Right? What are the friendships like? They're not healthy. Right? There's a lot of, you know what, man? It sounds like you just made the case that this isn't a show you should be watching, right? Like this isn't a book you should be watching. This isn't music you should be consuming. This isn't a podcast you should be listening to. This isn't a talk show you should be, you know, listening during your commute. Like, so I always ask people if they're like, hey, should I engage with this? I ask them, well, what do you think? Like, why shouldn't you? And if you can give reasons, then it's like, hey everyone, Pastor Sam here. Thanks for joining us for another midweek Bible study video. If you didn't see the sermon that we were talking about, you can find it here. Or if you're interested in more of these midweek Bible study videos and thoughts as Pastor Mario and I break things down, you can find that here as well. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all our content. Thanks for joining us.